Welcome back, everyone. It is a absolute pleasure to see you all, especially in the light of finally hitting 1,000 subscribers. So I could not have done that without any of you. I honestly am absolutely over the moon about it because almost exactly a year ago, 3 days to be exact, 3 days from now, on January 22nd, I launched this channel. And initially, it was all about I was promoting a book that I had coming out called Weird World War IV, and I wanted to just use YouTube to interview or as a means to promote that book. And then this thing kind of took a turn of its own as I started figuring out what I could do with it and kind of indulged my curiosity and all that good stuff. So the first thing is welcome to 2023. 2023 kind of feels a little bit like 2022, which was like a repeat of 2020 and 2021. So just more clownish buffoonery, I guess, is on the way. So there's three things I was going to talk about today. The first is a little bit about upcoming episodes, and I'm not as far into February yet as I'd like to be, but I still haven't shown you some of the episodes that are coming in the rest of January. So I'll hit that pretty quickly. And then I'm going to go through a very brief state of the channel because it can kind of get boring for people who don't care about stats and things like that. So I'm just going to go through it really quickly. And to be completely honest and transparent, I was trying to make some more detailed updates in PowerPoint, and I was having some technical issues, and I just said, they're not going to want to see this anyway, but I do it for myself. So if people really are into that, just put something down in the comments and let me know what you think about that. So with that said, let's talk about some of the upcoming episodes that I'm going to have coming your way. So let me just pull this up. And yeah, I don't even know if you need to see me down there, but just actually, it's probably important because I think last time I did this, I took myself off, and then let's let you see this a little bit better. I can see there's some folks on. Welcome. If you've just joined us, I'm going through some of the next episodes that we're gonna have. So, if you recall from earlier this, I think earlier this week, we interviewed Dale Graff, who was the person who ran Project Stargate. In fact, he's the one who came up with the name. So I'm going to, he's going to appear again because he's since become an expert on precognitive dreaming and has quite the track record in terms of being able to predict the news and things like that. So definitely tune in to that particular episode. And then I'm just going to go straight to, as long as you can all still hear me. Good, I think you can. All right. So the next is, this came from a recommendation from a friend. Ryan Stacy has his own channel on YouTube. He's interviewed people like Richard Dolan, things like that. And what he does is he's a professional private investigator, and he does normal private investigations as one does, right? But he also looks into private investigations of UFOs and with experiencers who are going crazy because no one believes them. And, he will go and find the evidence. And in many cases, in about 95% of the cases that he looks at, he finds, nothing, or he finds things that are prosaic explanations. So one of the most common things that people will misidentify or misreport as a UFO is Starlink, that group of satellites. It's like a chain of satellites that flies across the sky. So, we talk about things like that. And that said, we focus on that 5%, the 5% that he can't find common or simple explanations for. And he's primarily focused in Canada. So they actually have an easier time for some reason or another of getting more access to FOIA requests inside the U.S. I'm not sure if it has something to do with Canadian, like Canada's rights are the government's rights and treaties with the U.S. are, but they have better access for some reason. So, he goes through, there's I first talk about his practice and what he looks for. And then we have another episode on the strangest cases that he's seen up in Canada. And he actually does some investigations in the US as well. So definitely stay tuned for that one. Those are both pretty good episodes. And then I don't know if you all know who John Yost is, but he produced a documentary. He works for Rhino Pictures, and he produced a documentary called Alien Abductions Answers. You can go to Amazon. You can find it on iTunes. I highly recommend it, but he goes through the testimonies of several different experiencers and records their struggles and things like that. And he himself has been an experiencer. He's an extremely articulate guy. He's from Pittsburgh. There's a lot of backstory that he didn't really discuss on the call, but I think is nonetheless extremely interesting. So he, at one point tried to start his, I think he was running the largest film production company outside of Hollywood, inside the U.S. and Pittsburgh. So we don't get too much of that, but it's really interesting. And he also talks about future plans he has with those documentaries. He plans to make at least 2 more, and I'm not going to reveal those, but he does talk about it in the episode. One thing to note about this particular episode, I had a lot of problems with YouTube getting around the copyright claim. So as an example, John, obviously owns rights to his own film. And I showed a clip in the beginning, which was kind of like more like a commercial or like a trailer of it. And John had given me full permission, like, yeah, knock yourself out. And I didn't even ask. He said, feel free to use it. Here are the links. You can download them, etc. And I immediately got a copyright claim. And I know that if I kind of went all the way through, I'd be fine. But ever since monetizing, kind of interacting with Google, like Google is very good at designing artificial intelligence and creating new technologies. But, from other work I've done in other areas, they really struggle when they have to like meet a customer. And whether a creator's a customer or if, somebody's trying to build or buy cloud infrastructure, like they really, really struggle. So rather than just fight that claim, I put the full original episode up on Spotify and Rumble. So you can see the trailer there. It's not much different. The one that's on YouTube, I just want to deal with the hassle. And the way that they handled it, they said they could remove the music because the music was the problem. So I said, okay, Google had an algorithm that said it could remove the music. It never removed the music, but then it said it was fine. But then at the bottom of the video, it said that the producer of the 10-second music that's played in the trailer may or may not get the ad revenue. And I was just, I went through YouTube support and they said, oh, you're fine. And I'm like, are you sure you're fine? There's this thing at the bottom. Oh, well, we can't make any guarantee. And after that, I'm like, so it was just so ambiguous. And I'm a pretty black and white person, right? In terms of like, it's either yes or it's no. And I was getting this Sphinxian kind of response. So I just pulled it out. Anyway, definitely check it out. It's a really good episode. I have a second episode with John called Disclosure, the Plan. And in his experiences, he has very strong feeling about how he thinks disclosure will happen. So I highly recommend that. But, in case you haven't figured out, it ain't going to be the government. The government's never going to let this stuff out. So depending on whether or not it's a nothing burger and there's nothing, or if there's an extensive world out there that we're unaware of, he kind of goes into that. So I highly, highly recommend that episode. And then last but not least, I'm still processing 2 episodes, but I have, I have a Patreon service. And in that service, I kind of take, if somebody recommends a guest, I take them very seriously and I try to do my best to get the guest on. And if you all follow YouTube, Ryan Macbeth has an amazing channel where he goes through like military technology and all that good stuff. So I have 2 episodes with Ryan that I've recorded. I just have to process them. So those will appear in February unless there's like a major natural disaster. So that's where I am right now. And that's kind of what I'm up to on these videos. So with that, the next thing I wanted to discuss, and I know I'm looking down at my screen. I know it's kind of a little annoying and rude, but this is the part I'll try to get through pretty quickly. And this is the state of the channel. So with that said, I'm going to literally rush through this really quick because this can bore people, and I do not want to bore people. Okay, I really have to get faster at this because I'm pretty slow. Okay. All right. So as of today, just really high level throughout the year, we had 44 guests spanning 122 episodes, specifically where I had interviews. All the other episodes or videos that I recorded were either some combination of kind of a standalone video, a live stream, or these hot clips that I'm going to try to do a little bit less of just because they take a lot of time, they take a lot of disk space, and half the audience loves them, half the audience hates them, and I'd rather focus mainly on new content. But in total, I had 250 videos with 121 plus hours of content published last year. And the average episode was 29, a little over 29 minutes. Now that's just kind of your averages because I had lots of long episodes that are over an hour, and then these hot clips that are shorter. So enough said on that. Okay, this is about it. So just channel self-assessment really quickly. So at the very beginning, before I knew anything about YouTube and when I started, I kind of built this model, and I wanted to made some assumptions, and I wanted to see where I was. So I built this last February, and then every month I update it to see where I am. So I get closer, but I projected far fewer impressions than I actually got. Oops, let me just go back. At the very beginning. So AOP is just annual operating plan. Then in December, I was a little optimistic. I actually got here. So I'd say I'm a yellow. On my click-through rate, so that's the percentage if somebody sees I'm getting more accurate. In the beginning, I didn't know what I was doing, but that could do a lot better. You need to get better at thumbnails. On views, I actually was predicted about 80% more views than I thought I would get. But again, I get pretty close when I'm a month out. On subscribers, I was actually under in my original projection, so I beat that, but I missed it by about 40 in my December forecast, so that's fine. Production, I was like way over. I did way more than I predicted, almost double. In terms of average views, I'm doing better than I predicted at the beginning of the year, but a little bit less, but it's still pretty good. Like having 12 minutes average on video is actually very good. In terms of average views, percentage, I'm getting better. I didn't really have a good estimate at the beginning. In fact, I didn't really know how to calculate it properly. Now that I do, I'm doing okay. For longish videos, this is pretty good. For short videos, it's not good at all. It's just on a curved scale. Comments, I'm not sure how to project that, but I'd say I'm okay. I'm doing okay on that. All right, and this is just the self-assessment so far. This is the last slide, and then we're going to move on to questions after this. But if you look at it, and kind of just looking down as I review it, I would say getting better at screen presence, but not great. Just getting better and better guests. It's just the smaller your channel is, the harder it is. But I think I've been batting above my weight, but it's still tough. Thumbnails are getting better, but they're not there. Titles getting better, not there. Shorts, it's been like a waste of time. Every one that I do performs worse than the rest, and they take. If you want to do something and do something well, they take forever. We have two more. comments. Let's see. Oh yeah. So I'm just going to answer Kev's question. Before I started, did I anticipate YouTube success would be easier? No. I'm actually, I mean, you can see it from my forecast, right? I would say I probably, like going through it, it seems harder. But if I look at the actual numbers that I projected for the channel at the very beginning, so if you look in that, the very beginning of, in February of last year, I thought I would have around 600 and something followers right now, or not followers, but subscribers right now. And I'm doing better than that. So I anticipate it would be hard. Now, that said, I did not anticipate that it would require me to make 250 videos to get there. I thought I'd be able to make half as many videos and get there. And, maybe I could have, I don't know. It's not the way it went, but I just know that I am doing all I can do to make the channel succeed. So I have no regrets from that, but it is brutal. The one thing that I did underestimate is how little YouTube helps you. So, and I'm not saying that in terms of as a complaint. It's just a fact. At least in my situation, it may be different. It's different for maybe different for others. And when I say it's a fact, I have the data. So, in terms of the number of views that I have, 57% of them came from me. And by me, it was posting on Reddit or posting on other areas of the internet and driving traffic to YouTube. 57%. YouTube was responsible for 43% of those views based on their impression system. And so the bottom line is, if you want to succeed, you can't rely on YouTube. You kind of have to find a way to promote yourself on your own. Eventually, I think, over time, YouTube has been sending more impressions my way. And I'm not, this is not to say that I'm being picked on or anything like that. I'm absolutely not. It's just there are millions, literally millions of channels, and there's no systematic way to algorithmically pick the gems and promote the gems, etc. I'm sure YouTube believes there is, and maybe there is, and maybe I'm just not a gem. I don't know. But I just think that when you're small, it doesn't matter. And the other data point I have for this is an amazing show, and you should all go there after you see me, because I think he also, AJ Gentile, runs a live stream on the Y-Files, and his experience feels very similar to mine. So, there's, again, you'll have to watch his story, but he actually came from the media and broadcasting industry. And he was like a radio host, and he has all the skills to do really well. He produces extremely high production value content. And it took him like 2 years to get to 15,000 subscribers. And then in like 3 months, he's at 1 million plus. And he deserves to be at 1 million plus. He actually creates content that is that good. But he's had a similar story where he had to go to TikTok and bring people over from TikTok and all this other crazy stuff. It was not all up and to the right. So I'm not the only one. It's just the nature of the beast, and you got to get used to it. All right, so let's just get through this really quickly, and then I want to start answering questions. So live stream, we'll see. Video quality, I think, is getting better. I think audio quality, I think I'm finally figuring this thing out. Sales, I'm just not a salesman, so it is what it is. And then outreach, just getting word about the channel out is, could be better. So that is it for that. So, okay, so let's go to start taking questions. So for the first time ever, actually, Bruno left me a question. I'm going to keep this up so that people know where we are in the live stream, so that we can start answering questions. So I'm gonna read this aloud. Just have to find it. And by the way, I'm still thinking about this question because it's such a good question, and it's a very hard question. Okay. So verbatim. Hi, Sean. What is an area of research where you find less answers, i.e., where people are less willing to disclose what they know, or there is less data available. A second question is, what of everything you have been told has challenged your beliefs the most or kept you awake at night? Thanks, and keep up the good work. All right, so on the first question, this is, yeah, okay. I have to be very careful how I phrase this. So there have been times when, like pre-interview, I would talk to somebody with, loose ties to some entity, and I would ask very direct questions like, can we do an episode about Russia Ukraine, for instance? And they'll be like, no, I can't because what I do is, I could get into trouble and stuff like that. And it's like, okay. I said, okay, this is just a spitball, but what kind of stuff do you know about, given what you do, about UFOs? And I just got to look and kind of a pursed lips, and then no answer, and something like, just kind of like, I don't go there, and another response that, but NASA has plenty of data that shows this stuff. And so there are certainly things out in space that our government either classifies as UAPs and doesn't know how to deal with them, or they know more than that. That's all I can say from some of my interactions. But either way, for someone to say, "Oh, it's that's fake. This is fake." There's stuff out there we don't know what it is. Okay, at a minimum. At a minimum. Now, whether or not we have more data, than whether we have recovered craft and things like that, I think that stuff all is still open to suggestion, interpretation, and things like that. But there's definitely phenomena out there that we don't know what it is, and it's not freaking drones. Okay, because if the Chinese have drones like that, we might as well surrender right now. And that's why I was absolutely astonished that was one of the explanations they tried to float. Because if that's the case, they are not doing their jobs, and we are in trouble. And I am horrified if that's the case. So that's kind of, I think, the answer to the first question. An answer to the second question is things that have challenged my beliefs. I don't think anything has kept me awake at night. Sorry, I'm reading Kev's question, and yeah, but so Hecklefish, for people who don't know, is on the Y Files. It's like this character that AJ Gentile created. It's like a fish that talks about lizard people and stuff like that, and it's just kind of comic relief. I am a professional horror writer. Like, if I had something, it would be creepy. It would be super creepy. Like, there would be some like mannequin with tentacles coming out of its head. Apparently, by the way, that's not my idea. That was my 4-year-old son came up with that one in like a retail store somewhere, according to my wife. So I don't. But yeah, I don't know. AJ Gentile's better at humor than I am, but it's a good idea. Anyway, I should go back to the second question, because I don't. In terms of what things made it difficult to sleep at night, the only thing that would kind of freak me out is like the Hat Man phenomena that people talk about. It's pretty creepy stuff. But again, I've never, as far as I know, I've never experienced it. I think I've had maybe sleep paralysis, but I always remember fighting through it and breaking out of it. So if anything's ever tried to do that to me, that they haven't been able to, because I remember just willing myself out of it and fighting. So, but yeah, That's the best I can do on that second question. So each time I post a live stream, I always post on the community tab a Google Doc where you can go in and enter your question in advance. And Bruno is the first person to ever have done that. So kudos to him. I think it's great because he had that worm in my head for a few days. I'm just trying to think. That's a good question. How do I answer this in a way that's really, really interesting? So anyway, all right. It is full up question time. So if you have a question about what guests you'd like to see, and I mean I have questions for you too. The first would be if you're not asking questions, I'm going to start asking the audience questions. So how did you find the site out of just the vast sea of random content on YouTube? How did you suddenly kind of crash upon the shores of Through a Glass Darkly? Kev, how did you find me? Kev. All right. Well, pending no questions, I'm going to relate another story, another huge, huge frustrating thing that I'm trying to deal with right now. So I have a spread shop with merchandise and stuff like that. So, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, remote viewing. Okay. Yeah, that makes some sense. All right, I'm going to go back to my story. So, when you monetize for the first time, there are certain things that things that are unlocked, and one of them is this merch shelf. Now, I've had like a spread shop for a while. I don't promote it too much because, the channel's not big enough, and I don't want to be annoying. But what was annoying is there was a way to just kind of connect that shop to your YouTube channel, and then it displays something called the merch shelf. So I do that. It's seemingly seamless, and then a week passes, and my stuff doesn't appear. So I reach out to YouTube, and they're like, "Oh, you have to go to your online shop manager at Spreadshop." So I go there, and they're like, "We transferred everything. We don't even know what they're talking about." And I've never had a problem with Spreadshop, and they've always been really easy to work with and transparent. So I went back. So I know the problem's on YouTube's end. So I went back, and it was like talking to artificial intelligence. It was just like, "Thank you very much. We really want you to succeed. Take a look at our policies and service and stuff like that." I'm like, "Well, can you just tell me, was it rejected? Is it just a delay? It takes a while the first time. Is it like I couldn't get any of those answers?" So like every day, and then like you only get one question a day. You ask a question, and then they respond like the next day, and then it's like the Sphinx. It's like the riddles of the Sphinx. So then I'll send something else, and then they'll respond. But today, I got my best answer ever, which really just led to another question. But it led to a question that, okay, I just want to know if my stuff didn't get selected. Is there a thing that just said it's been rejected or not? Can you tell me that much? Is there like something that said, or is it just doesn't work? So anyway, do I still bother to read the New York? I read as many different sources of information as I can, but you're unlikely to get the reality of what's going on if you read the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and watch Fox News, because they're all kind of the same flavor of, I don't want to say propaganda because there's some stuff that's accurate, but you just have to look at multiple sources. I particularly enjoy reading The Economist magazine. Like, you can't really read U.S. media because it's just pure propaganda, depending on which side you're on. But The Economist, there's still some propaganda in there, but it's less. It's like British propaganda. It's focused on Britain. They don't really focus too much on what's going on in the. They're more objective about what's going on in the U.S. than any U.S. media source. So, but in terms of my cynicism, I'm at peak cynicism right now. What I find hilarious is like these political parties weaponizing the federal government, and then it's starting to explode in their face, right? So they went after Trump for this classified materials, but they never went after Hillary Clinton. Well, they did a little bit, but they kind of just gave up, and they're probably going to give up on Trump. And then they find the president who had classified materials inside his garage next to his Corvette as he's. So it's just a clown show. It's just these guys. None of these guys, the law doesn't apply to them. I mean, that's, as I grow older and more cynical, the judicial system works for you if you have more power or more money, and that's it. Doesn't matter if you're right or wrong. That irrelevant. Do you have enough money, or do you have more money than the other guy, or do you have more power than the other guy? Full stop. That's how our judicial system works. So anyway, that's kind of where I stand on that. So it's difficult to recognize propaganda, but there are certain questions you just have to ask yourself. Who's reporting the information, and whose interests does it serve? Okay. So, and then couple that with Occam's razor. So what's the simplest explanation of what could be happening? So I don't want to go too much into the C word. I also have to be very careful about certain words now, because I see how the algorithm works in terms of demonetizing videos and things like that. But the origin story of what happened in Wuhan, I knew from the jump was complete crap. Right? Actually, another tell is if something happens, if there's a news story and somebody comes up with a counter narrative, and the first response of the media or their opponents is to declare racism. That's like a key. That's like the biggest tell. If that's the first label somebody uses to go after somebody, that means where there's smoke, there's fire. Like there's something to with the person who's been called that, been labeled that term is. Like that is the number one tell. And it's not working anymore because it no longer means what it used to mean. So that's how I recognize it. I'm trying to think of an example. So there's Graham Hancock. I can't remember. He's got something called something about the apocalypse. He talks about this younger Dryas period and more advanced civilizations being on Earth prior to 7,500 years ago. And it's a huge mess for academics because they've staked entire professional careers on this careful analysis and narrative that human civilization didn't start until 6,000 years ago. And, I'm not saying it started before then, but there's a lot of new evidence that's coming out that's hinting at that possibility, where you've had these huge cataclysms over time that have wiped out prior, more advanced civilizations. And the problem is when you're a tenured professor, and that's all you are, like that's your entire personhood. Like that's why you exist, is because you studied this stuff long and hard. To have somebody come in who's just a journalist of all people, and believe me, I resonate with that. Like, this freaking journalist is coming in, he's going to tell me, but I have 30 years of scholarship on this topic, and he thinks he can. But they find places like Göbekli Tepe or something like that. It's a place in Turkey where it's like 9,000 years old or something, and so they keep changing definitions and stuff like that to stay ahead of this stuff. But again, you can recognize the propaganda because the interests of the establishment and academia are not to be shown wrong. Now, there's a reason for that, right? Because they want to have a higher standard of evidence, and that's fine, but just at least engage and try to, excuse me, and try to make a case or just try to look into this, or at least, or even try to debunk it, right? But they won't even let these people speak. So that's how that's another way to recognize propaganda, right? It's their livelihood that's at stake if you were to, if that were to be true. So anyway, that's a long that's, I mean, I I don't know. I mean, probably, but you know what? They're probably harder working people than, um I shouldn't say that, but California feels like it's just falling apart because there's just obvious decisions that are bad decisions, right? So requiring no non EV cars to be sold by 2020 immediately blew up in our governor's face like a week after he announced it, when he had to tell all the EV owners not to plug in their EVs because we didn't have enough supply on the grid. And we didn't have enough supply on the grid because these morons closed down a hydroelectric dam to save some fish, when that's kind of the greenest possible form of electric generation. Meanwhile, they're also closing nuclear power plants. And as a result, they have these unstable wind and solar, which is great if you get up to about 25% of your grid capacity. But after that, it's peaking power, right? It's intermittent. It's not stable. It's not burning 24 hours a day like a nuclear power plant would be, or a coal power plant, or a hydroelectric dam. And you also have issues with, a drought that we've had for many years in California. And then suddenly we just got these massive atmospheric rivers that have been, buffeting us for the past month. I don't think I've seen the sun until recently for about a month. So it was super depressing. And, there's roads collapsing and things like that, all like completely and eminently avoidable. But you just have people making decisions about demand policy when they don't have enough supply to make that policy on the electric grid work. It's just like it's like a clown show. We are run by morons. And again, this is not a political state. I mean, it's not based on one political party. I can find examples on both sides. Like, you see this George Santos story? This guy like invented his whole existence, and he became elected to Congress. Like, how did that happen? Again, not about Republicans or Democrats. It's just they're both like they're just front row at the clown show. Front row at the clown show. So I hope there's some sort of disclosure or something like that. Just please save us from ourselves, because the best people, the smartest people, are not running the government. They're just not. And it's obvious. All right, let's see. Yeah, I mean, I was getting winter depression. I mean, good God, you couldn't even go outside. Just rain, constant. So, it was better today, but everything's still wet. Thank God I live on a hill. Now, that has its own risks, like mudslides and things like that. But we didn't, get any flooding or anything like that, because it just rolls straight into the San Francisco Bay. So that was good. So what other questions you guys have? I'm just sitting here ranting. I don't know why you'd watch the rants, because they're not even good. Maybe. I don't know. Kev's asking all the questions. Who are the lurkers? Who's lurking in there? Come on, guys. Come on. Let me see. I'm trying to think if I have anything else that I didn't. Oh yeah, I didn't show you this. I have this thing. I'm just gonna show it to you really fast. It'll take like 2 seconds. Because it's not a mystery. Hey, I answered your question, Bruno. Welcome. You're the first person to ever fill out that Google Doc that I posted. The first ever. So I made sure that everybody knew that you did that. Yeah, exactly. The Google Forms. Yeah, so I answered them. I mean, I can answer them again, but you can. I mean, it's all at the beginning. Yeah. Just watch it afterwards. I don't think there was anything. I'll tell you what, they were really insightful questions. Like I had to think about them. And the answer to one of them is the answer to the first one is pretty cryptic, because I just need to be careful because the answer is kind of not a public question. Like if I spoke to you in private, I would absolutely tell you what it was, but not on the internet. Okay. Oh, so I'm gonna jump away from questions for like a second, because I just want to show you a little video. It's just it's like a little victory lap, but that's about it. So here it goes. All right, I'm going to do that again because it's all messed up with the banner. One more time. So thank you, everyone, for that, for helping me out on that. So, okay, I'm going to go right back to questions. Where are we? Here we go. All right. Wow, I got like 3 in a row. Yeah, thank you. Bruno, it took so long, but here's actually. So I was looking at the numbers too, and here's something that's just kind of interesting. So it felt like to get to like 100 subscribers, it took forever, and then that took about 3 months to get to 400. It took another 7 months, but then it took about 3 months to get from 400 to 1,000. Yeah. So the rule of thumb, as I was just like crunching the numbers, is on average every quarter, so every 3 months, the number of subscribers roughly doubles. Now, that won't be like sustainable. That'll be unsustainable for the long term. But in the first, I think, after the first quarter, second quarter, the first quarter you can't really tell because you're starting from nothing. But in the second, third, and fourth quarter, they roughly doubled each time. So we'll see. Like while you're in it, it doesn't feel that way. It's actually pretty painful, but I don't know. I'm getting better at it. The other big challenge is making sure that you always have like a guest, and that the guest shows up, when they're supposed to be interviewed and all that good stuff. So the other thing we did, Bruno, is we went through some of the upcoming shows and things like that. So I think you'll be pleasantly surprised by some of the guests. Anyway, but the good thing is there are millions of people who are going through the same thing, and for the most part, it's like people, as long as the people who keep it up generally tend to be able to grow channels. I think it's just like a huge filter. So if you just don't have the time, or but it's hard to get those. It's hard to get those guests, because I'm one degree of freedom away from a lot of really good guests, but I can't, I'm 1 degree of freedom away from Whitley Strieber. So I'm trying desperately to do that. Same thing with Richard Dolan. I'm like one, actually it's probably multiple degrees of freedom from some of these guests. Who else am I trying to get? I'm multiple degrees of freedom away from Travis Taylor of Skinwalker Ranch repute, I guess is the word. But I still have not been able to be successful with that. So you have to develop that trust relatively quickly. What I try to do is I speak with the guests for a while sometimes. With David Morehouse, I think we were like on Zoom for like 8 hours, 6 to 8 hours before we recorded a video, because we were just telling not real war stories, but war stories from the military. And just so there's some guests you really, really get along with, which is why he's appeared on the show multiple times. he's awesome. More so, I'm supposed to record 2 more episodes with him. I haven't recorded them yet, so I don't want to. Things can happen. People miss meetings and things like that. But like the Ryan Macbeth stuff, I just have to process it. So yeah, I definitely recommend. Uh, you know, or not recommend, but it's tough to get sometimes to get folks on there, and sometimes you panic because I try to do about a month ahead with all the videos so that I'm not panicking and not racing. And then you run into other things, right? So I've never kind of come close to running out of storage. Like that's becoming an issue now. I think I have like 60 gigabytes left on my Dropbox account. So yeah, there's a lot of like operational stuff that is behind the scenes that nobody sees, and you kind of have to work on it. And then the other thing too is it's like it takes a lot of time and resources to do this, but I'm only starting to generate some de minimis income from it, which is it's nice. It's created from nothing, but it takes a while. And then there's other because there's millions of channels, YouTube has to use artificial intelligence, and it's in order to like look for copyright claims and things like that. And they just don't have enough people to deal with some of the issues. So there's no one to talk to resolve issues and stuff like that. So that can be really frustrating. So I was telling people earlier, I have I was trying to establish a merch self, and I'm not sure if it just takes 2 weeks to do, or if Google rejected it, or like I have no idea, and nobody at Google can tell me the answer. I'm hoping I'll get the answer tomorrow. But you ask a question to YouTube support, and then it takes like a day because everybody with 1,000 subscribers has access to that. So I'm sure that they're just getting crushed. And I'm a former army officer, and I can be rough. I can be rough with people who don't give me answers because yeah, I have like low tolerance for, and I'm trying to be more empathetic with these folks, but we'll see. Yeah, I think I don't think there's any shadow banning. I think it's just a raw number. Oh yeah. Oh, sorry. I'm jumping around. I missed Kevin's comment. Um, Christopher Robinson. I'm not sure who David Sereda is, but I'll look him up. Christopher Robinson is fascinating. He's that guy in the UK who like predicted the Lockerbie, Scotland crash bombing to I think the day and the color of the aircraft, and he just knows things. And yeah, I think there's for folks who want to find you want to watch an episode. There's 2 episodes on Thinking Aloud with Jeffrey Mishlove. Definitely check this out because he interviews this guy who he's worked for Scotland Yard solving murder cases and things like that, and he has these dreams where he'll see like dogs, and then the dogs will turn into people, and he's like, yeah, those usually mean terrorists. If the people start out as dogs, it turns out that they end up being terrorists in the dream. So yeah, so yeah, Bruno, it is a behemoth, but I empathize with YouTube and this. Like I understand why. I mean, if you had to adjudicate, there's probably 3 million channels that have monetized. I don't know if that's in the US or total, but there's just not enough resources to parse that out to human beings all the time. So, I made my own compromises. So, Bruno, I was just telling the audience about an episode I have with John Yost, who is a director and producer. He did a film called Alien Abduction Answers. It came out last year around the May timeframe. So he encouraged me to use his trailer at the beginning, just in my video somewhere. So I put it in one of my videos, and I instantly got a copyright claim, not from him, but just from the algorithm in YouTube. And it was just like, and couldn't tell if I intermediated it or not, because YouTube said it would remove some song, but it didn't. And then there was like something that said third-party ad revenue, right? And I was just like, and YouTube really support couldn't really tell me if they would get the ad revenue or I would, so I just removed it. But I didn't remove it from, I also upload my interviews, specifically my interviews, to Spotify. So for that one, I think the title of that particular episode is Subterranean Abduction. You can also watch that one on Spotify because it has the full trailer at the beginning. It doesn't really change the episode that much, but it'll give people a little bit more context. And then I also have a channel on Rumble that also it'll appear there too, the full episode. So YouTube will have, it'll get its own special truncated episode, just so I don't have to deal with and just I'll give you a perfect, well, I got to be careful about how I say this because it'll trigger it again. But there is a certain term for refrigerated trucks. So just look it up. And then rope is made of a substance that is also used to, it is also a substance that people smoke. So David Morehouse, in one of the hot clips, used both terms in a hot clip, and that particular hot clip got demonetized because it sounded like something it wasn't. So I can see why the artificial intelligence would flag that, but as soon as I kind of submitted it for review, the good folks at YouTube, i.e. the people, recognized that it, was misidentified and then remonetized it. So there is a lot of impersonal, but my understanding is that the bigger the channel gets, at some point, I don't know how many subscribers it is, but you actually get an account executive or, somebody who helps you navigate these issues. So I'm definitely trying to be more careful. Like, I'm not cursing. I would curse once in a blue moon on some of the old videos, but now I'm even bleeping people out when they use language on my videos, because it's just, at the end of the day, you have to look at it from the perspective of an executive who's trying to get ad revenue. And if you have too much profanity and things like that, you're going to be less attractive in terms of getting CPM and stuff like that. So yeah, I got to treat it a little bit more corporate-like. Yeah, it's the automation stuff that makes it difficult. People sometimes treat it like it's, they commit what's called the fundamental attribution error, right? They'll attribute to malice what is just something that's really due to systems or just natural mistakes. And that's what's scary about YouTube too, is that, sometimes the algorithm will just randomly demonetize channels and shut them down, and it'll be like an algorithmic mistake. So the best you can do is just try to stay within the lines and not do anything too crazy. But as you can see, I'm not even saying the C word, right? Because it just it could get flagged. Or when I was on the video with Ryan Macbeth, he said something about a country that is spelled China, and then he immediately corrected himself and he said the Chinese Communist Party, because apparently if you say that other thing too much, you also get demonetized. It's very bizarre. Very bizarre. Let's see. So I'm just reading Bruno's. Oh, I keep forgetting I can do this. I need to do a better job of that. I keep forgetting. Yeah, and what I try to do with that is also build off of prior episodes. But you also have to treat every episode like it's, for somebody new coming in, it's new. So it's a tightrope act. Let me see. I'm going to remove this one banner, and I'm still taking questions, but I think it'll be, you can see my face and it's not like I'm getting cut off. Let's see. Okay. All right. So of the content that I'm putting on, kind of the three major buckets, there's this paranormal bucket, which I've been making a lot of content on, just because it just performs a lot better. But there's also geopolitical content, and then there's also some writing stuff. You saw it with Tim Powers and things like that. He's the writer responsible for the Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides. Like, he wrote like on Stranger Tides, but the writing content doesn't do as well. But I'm still committed to helping out writers and things like that. So, of the content that I'm putting out, where do you want to see a little bit more geopolitics, or just stay more into the paranormal zone, or would you like to see some other content that I'm not even exploring yet? Anybody have any thoughts on that? Let me see. What about some of the standalone episodes that I did? So there was the Skinwalker episode where we went to the outskirts of the Skinwalker Ranch. And there's one I think I did on Itzhak Bentov's, what's it called? Stalking the Wild Pendulum. Yeah. Is there anything that I feel like I'm doing too much? So, like, what new kind of takes can I do on RV that I haven't done before? Because I feel like I haven't interviewed everyone from the former program. Ed Dames would be an interesting interview, to say the least, but I don't know how to get a hold of him. Who is Martin Armstrong and Mark Faber? Here again, I'm going to throw this up so that Charles Nenner, Mark Armstrong, Mark Faber. All right, think about that. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think I've approached it slightly differently than others, but you can only ask the individual, like different individuals. You can only come back to the well for certain stories, right? Because they're just going to run out of stories. So, or experiences. So one of the Morehouse episodes actually is not going to be about remote viewing. It's going to be I'm not sure if I should even say one of the topics, because when it appears, it might be. He worked for an organization called the I think it's the Intelligence Support Activity. Right today, like in Iraq and Afghanistan, they called it Task Force Orange, but it's an organization that supports kind of the special operations community. And there's a movie, I think, with Jason Statham called The Killer Elite that's kind of loosely based on the activity, or the Task Force Orange, or whatever it's called nowadays. But it's like the military's version of human intelligence, and they do a lot of crazy stuff. So Morehouse did some of that stuff when he was in the either before or after Stargate. So I think we're going to do an episode on some of that. And again, it's so old, it's like 30 or 40 years hence, so I'm sure everything's changed. And then there was a trip that a bunch of remote viewers took to Peru when that he led them, I think, post-military. So he's going to talk a little bit about that, provided that nothing comes up between now and then. That's another reason I don't want to say too much. Let's see. Wait, who's a cycles man? No election in 2024. You guys you're scaring me, Kev. Oh, Armstrong Economics. Yeah, no one knows how to. I don't know how to contact him. So I've reached out. I've reached out to Hal Puthoff because there's a paper he wrote on ultra terrestrials, and there's an email at the bottom of the paper. No response. Nothing. Um, Another person I would love to have on is Lou Elizondo, but let's see. So I guess what? Oh, Martin Armstrong does. Oh yeah, yeah. I can see why because he's behind everything. Like there's so much stuff that he does that he's behind everything. Yeah, and yeah, that's the other thing too. Like I have friends who one friend told me once, and I'm not going to say his name, but he was just like, sometimes I think you're counterintelligence. I'm like, what? What? And he's just like, you just you just know stuff you like that seems to indicate you know more than you probably do. I'm like, well, yeah, I because I don't know anything. I got nothing. I just look at the data and be able to make connections and links that most a lot of people just aren't. Um, but yeah. Oh, yeah. So Russian naval infantry actually in chem suits. I forget where I found it. You can see the AK-47s, right? Or maybe they're AK-74s. I can't tell from the picture, but they're Russian naval infantry. And then I superimposed it on. By the way, the castle that you always see behind me, there's a place in Lake Tahoe called what's it called? Now I'm blanking. It begins with an E. Emerald Lake, and it's like this little inlet off Lake Tahoe, and there's this castle that was built. It's not really a castle, but it was built in kind of I think the early 1900s, and it's based on like a Swedish kind of model. But you go down this hill, and it's just right on Emerald Lake, and I just took a picture of it, and then I just changed the color and all that stuff. But that place is one of my happy places. Now, getting back up that hill is brutal. Like there's like all these signs that like if you're experiencing cardiac arrest and this and that, and then like yeah, you got to take some breaks as you're going up that hill. But let's see. Oh yeah, SAIC. Yeah, the Rand Corporation is another one. This SRI International. I mean, it used to be called the Stanford Research Institute, but it's SRI. Same thing, but I'm trying to think. I did a internship for one of them. For Booz Allen Hamilton when it was Booz Allen Hamilton. Back when I think in 2003 when they were hiring like crazy because of the Iraq War. And I got to work on two projects there. One was a DARPA related project where they worked on MEMS, micro electromechanical machines, or micro electromechanical sensors. But you can imagine having like kind of some of the devices that are in your iPhone, like pressure sensors and things like that. But they were going a whole other way in terms of like spy tech and things like that. But they're also looking at NEMS, nano electrical mechanical sensors. And then I also worked on a project for the Office of Net Assessment, which I think it used to be run by Andy Marshall forever inside the Pentagon. And what they would do is they would do futures simulations. They would look out 20, 30 years into the future. And the project I worked on looked at the future of China. And I think the two scenarios were an expansionist China and a internal collapse. And it was fascinating. That's all I'm going to say. But let's see. Oh, this is. Yeah, he blocked me on Twitter, so I don't think that's going to happen. Like, he personally blocked me, because I have thoughts about how. Yeah. Anyway, I don't want to lose my channel. If I tell you what those thoughts are, I'll lose my channel. But yeah, I made a comment that's basically, you're lucky you're still alive. Because what he did, like, the government provides me with a identity, like a free identity service, because of the crap that he did. Because what happened is, it, I believe, allowed the Chinese to hack into the Office of Personnel Management, and anybody who had a security clearance, I think, after 2003, until 2014 or something like that, it's millions of people, contractors, former military, things like that. So I'm not a fan. I am not a fan of him, and I would chew him alive on the show if I ever interviewed him. I mean, it would be ugly. Let's see. Yeah, like, look, he's probably right about what was happening, but it's not like the government's using that information about your private conversation at the kitchen table, right? They don't have the resources to listen to all that stuff. They're just vacuuming it up and looking at correlations, and then if there's certain correlations, then they like the algorithms they have might act on it. But it's not like the government. I mean, the government can't even get taxes right. I mean, you see how how mentally challenged Congress is. Like, they just don't have the resources to do that sort of thing. Although I am surprised that the FBI had the resources to cancel Twitter accounts. I'm astonished by that. There should be an investigation into that, in terms of violating the First Amendment rights of American citizens. Like, they crossed the line there. Absolutely. But let's see. Yeah, I think what they were doing back then with the PRISM program it's more like a macro sort of use of intelligence. It's not necessarily like individual, but it is pretty tricky, because you're monitoring foreigners on U.S. soil and things like that. Well, yes. Well, that's the thing, right? Like, the only reason it came out from Twitter is because of Elon Musk was able to acquire it. But if you don't think that stuff's not going on it's going on at all of them, and it's kind of like a slippery slope, because there may have been a good reason for it at first, like, hey, let's cut down on Russian bots and the disinformation of our adversaries. But then it turned out that a certain agency had more influence on the U.S. election than our enemies did, than our like peer competitors like Russia and China did, which is highly disturbing. What's 10 times worse? Just the I mean, I know there are certain, like, if you look at the Havana syndrome, like microwave weapons and things like that, where you can fry somebody's brain with the microwaves and stuff like that. That stuff's absolutely, or weapons, sonic type weapons or microwave type weapons like that are certainly possible. But like synthetic telepathy, I don't know. I haven't done any research on it. So I'm just gonna speculate. So if they were to continue the remote viewing program that they quote unquote officially canceled in 1996 and innovated on that for 20 years, then maybe it's possible some of this stuff has been coming out with remote influencing and all sorts of stuff like that. But that's not to say it's real. I would not be surprised if they kind of extended the capabilities in that direction if they continued programs like that. Oh, what is GVST? Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure the government. Like, yeah, I mean, if you're in a government, in your business of control, why wouldn't you try to do any of that stuff? But I mean, there are far more dangerous things that. Government surveillance. Okay. There are actually far scarier things that the government could do, right? So they control the FDA, right? So, you know, they can decide what's in the food. There's really there's really not much you can do about that. You get the wrong person in there. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely factions within the government. Like, I know if you talk to anybody who's ever worked in the CIA, they can't stand the FBI. Like, there's some definitely low brewing hatred there, because there's just two different styles, right? The CIA is a lot more flexible, but with that comes flexible morals a little bit, whereas the FBI is very black and white. And when they're talking to you, they're looking for one thing: to convict. So, even if you did nothing wrong. I mean, this is why you have like the Whitmer plot, where they basically coerced people to commit a crime. Like, so I don't. Yeah, but who? Like who? Congress? Congress? Yeah, but I don't. At some point you have to assume that not everybody's a sociopath, because if I gotta like earn money, pay taxes, and mind chickens and this and that, and the other thing is, if you do that, there's still all these microplastics in the environment. They're still eating that crap, right? I mean, you'd have to go and go way out into the boonies to. And the other thing is, you need to get away from other people too, because if you have a natural cataclysm, I was actually talking to Morehouse about this the other day. We were talking about people who are storing gold. It's gold and silver, and it's just like that's not going to do you any good in a cataclysm. It's just not. What are you going to do? Carry this gold around, right? If somebody wants to take it, they'll take it. Like, if they're armed, they'll just take it. It's just, I don't know. But, yeah, you can't eat gold. And that's the other thing too. Like, you could store up on food, but if you can't defend it, it doesn't matter. Somebody who's armed will just take it from you. Like, people don't get this stuff. And they're just like, why should everybody have an assault rifle? You don't need that. It's just like, well, if civilization collapses, you're going to need one. Anyway, Wingington. I don't know who Wingington is. Anyway, I can look into it. I mean, yeah, absolutely. So, I'm wondering why not fewer people on this one. I don't know if it's just a bad time of year or bad time, but yeah, well, climate's always changing, right? It's just whether or not it's worse or not. But you have a pole shift. The climate change doesn't matter. I mean, pole shift and Yeah, you have like a 2 mile high tsunami rolling across the U.S. Not great. All right. Anything else that people want to see on these live streams that they would find interesting? Oh, by the way, you might all appreciate this. I'm going to show like one or two of these maybe a week. Let me just see if I can find one. Let me see if I can find let's see. We have more comments, so I'm going to go back to the comments. And also, I like maintaining a nice, clean platform here. All right, so what do we got? What do we got? Oh yeah, I where is it? I have that right here. There we go. Yeah, so I've taken a little bit a break from it, but I've definitely I thought about doing maybe a video on it because it's crazy. Like the Axelrod guy, this whole secret organization that they're trying to figure out. Yeah, it's I have found this is going to sound terrible, but with Sam Bankman-Fried as a Exhibit A, people don't read anymore. So there's like gold in a lot of the like books because people don't read anymore. They don't cover it. So like when I covered Stalking the Wild Pendulum from Itzhak Bentov, like it's actually doing pretty well. And I'm like, why? And it's because I read a book and I reported what was in a book. And I did it in an semi entertaining way. Oh my God. Oh God. I would that would scare the Scheisse in German out of me. That would scare the Scheisse. I don't know. I couldn't do that. Anything that involves like demons, I'm out. I'm like old school. Like that's where the Catholic indoctrination as a kid, like I'm out. Like I can't. That stuff scares the crap out of me. I'll tell you a story because this is. So when I was 12 years old, they brought friends brought a Ouija board over to my house, and we were outside, and we were just playing with this thing. And at one point, it just like started like really fast. It just went to like SPH, and then it wrote, "I will see you in hell." And I'm like, and I didn't see it. It was so fast. And one of my friends was like, "Who's SPH?" And I'm like, "I'm done. I'm done. I'm not touching again." One of my former when I interviewed, why am I blanking on this? When I interviewed Jason Paget, who is like a bit into Lagati and stuff like that, but he also had some like PK experiences as a kid. Every time people are playing a Ouija, like or using a Ouija board in a room, like if he just comes over to a friend's house, whenever he enters the room, the Ouija board says, "Hi, John. Welcome back." Sorry, it's not Jason Paget, John Paget. Like every time, and it just freaks him out. He won't touch the stuff. But and if you watch anything, you're not like it's like opening up your front door to like just outside. Like you might be okay for a few weeks and months, but somebody's going to come in and rob you, right? Or somebody bad is going to come into your house. It's kind of, I think that's the analogy I've heard. So that stuff freaks me out. I don't. And again, like I don't even know if it's real or things like that, but Even you talk to atheists, they, you know, they'll say the same thing about Ouija. Ouija boards are like, yeah, I don't believe in that stuff, but like, I don't want to mess with that. It's not good. Yeah, I hope it was the wrong number. That scared the 12-year-old kid, the Catholic kid. That scared the crap out of me. Let's see. Yeah, it's literally bad juju. Just don't mess with that stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it's almost just like it's like a radio broadcast, I think. Because I think CRV, you're kind of sending your consciousness somewhere. This is just like you're putting out a radio broadcast. Like, hey, my house is open. Come on in. Come on over. Right? So I think that's kind of what the functional equivalent of all this stuff is. So do not mess with that stuff. What else? All right. Anything else, or should we wrap it up, call it a night? What do folks think? You guys want to like? If you don't have any questions, I'm happy to stay, but I don't want to bore people. I don't want to like people feel like they're not getting any value. Yeah, everybody's talking. It's like the McCandless thing. Yeah, that's a whole rabbit hole. Yeah, it was a really good stream, and everybody keeps disappearing. Like they're on the verge of giving a lecture about some new breakthrough, and then all of a sudden they're gone. They're dead. There was that guy, a filmmaker, who was doing a documentary on it, and then he got some like metastatic cancer that killed him like super fast, and they found all these trace radioactive elements in his like radioactive metals in his body that were not, somebody clearly poisoned him. So thank you, Kev, and thank you for always being here for the channel. I really appreciate it. Thank you for sticking by me, because it's still early days. So you all are like the core group. So please keep coming. You make it easier, because it's like marching uphill. So it's getting easier, but even the live streams, I think there could be a lot more I'm doing. I definitely prepared. I prepare the heck out of them, but yeah, he's. I have mixed feelings about him. Like, I mean, this is the one example. There's one story he tells about being sequestered into a van, and then he's taken to a hotel room, and the chief of army intelligence is sitting there to talk to him. Like a 3-star general is participating in an intelligence op. Like that doesn't happen. Like that's just, and then offers him $1 billion to be quiet. Like, look, you can offer an unsavory character $20,000 and they can make that problem go away. So like it's just like a lot of, like, he's very articulate, and there's like a lot of stuff that he says that's interesting and things like that. But when he starts talking about national security state stuff, like he'll slip up on things like that are just they're not credible. Like you're not, the government's defense budget is like $700 billion, and you mean to tell me you're gonna pay 0.14% of that budget to one guy to be quiet? Come on, it just doesn't make any sense. Oh, thank you, Chrono. Yeah, if you watch the beginning of this, I kind of go through it's not really a rant because I kind of understand where YouTube's coming from. It's just kind of like paying your dues. It just takes a really long time to build a good channel. So yeah, look, I think there's plenty of stuff that he talks about that is legit, but there's certain stuff that makes you kind of like, you know, he can be hyperbolic sometimes. So just be, and then there's the bit about there's the claim about the flares with the disclosure thing. I don't know if that's what really happened or if that's just the government throwing in some disinformation shade. I don't know. Yeah, not all of it, but there's some of it that's a little sketchy. Yeah, but again, like no one's spending $1 billion to shut somebody up, right? I mean, there's easier ways to make somebody disappear than paying them $1 billion. Like it's just not good stewardship of the U.S. government, U.S. government dollars. I know that sounds pretty heartless, but it's true. Like we go to war for far less. Joseph P. Farrell. I'll look him up. Yeah, it's definitely very murky. Hey, Jeremy, welcome. I mean, I could also understand why he's combative, and that's what I would worry about because I wouldn't give him a fair interview, but I would challenge him on that because I know people who have worked in special access programs, and they tell that story like, come on, like a 3-star general is not going to be in the middle of an op. It's just not. Oh, I need to. I haven't seen the Joe Rogan Greer interview. I would think that Joe Rogan would have just crushed him, but I don't. I'd have to. Yeah, I'll have to look at that. Let's see. Yeah, and that's the problem, right? If somebody's onto the truth, there's an incentive for the government to um, discredit them. So there's a story that Morehouse told me. Like he's very careful about who he talks to, and because sometimes you'll get to the CIA does something called strategic intelligence, and what they'll do is they'll get somebody to pose as a writer, and they'll write a book, and then when they write the book, they'll make you look like an idiot, or they'll do a documentary, and then when you show up, like as an example, he was telling me about one documentarian that did something on remote viewing, and he just said no, I'm not going to participate. But people who did, like he had when they introduced Mel Riley, they didn't just show Mel Riley, they showed him wearing like in full Indian headdress and going hey like, and it just made him look like a complete wackadoodle because Mel Riley's just this white guy in a big Indian headdress, right? When they showed the General Stubblebeam, like the guy who's played by last name Lang, I can't remember his first name, the actor, but in The Men Who Stare at Goats, like the general who like tries to walk through walls, when he's introduced in this documentary, it's like this purple haze and make him look like he's some psychedelic like drug fiend, and they do that to just discredit you, make you look like an idiot. There are other people who are otherwise highly credible, and I don't want to mention because I haven't done too much work into them, but they'll start talking about like secret space programs and this and that, which I'm not saying stuff's not real, but it seems highly incredible to me, right? If you had to build the USS Arleigh or whatever it's called, like 3 massive craft, something like that, you would not be able to hide the projects of kind of building those things from scratch. It would be very difficult, and you can't sequester people. I don't know. I just don't. I find that sort of stuff less credible. And they'll also talk about JSOC, like running it since the 1960s. And I don't even think JSOC existed. And then it's just like stuff like that where you can easily check to see if it's true or not. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's exactly, and they do it very well. Like they're really good at it. Richard Sauter. I'll definitely I'll have to review this video again to get all these names and make sure that I capture them. Yeah, I mean, I would have to be super nice because again, I'm not. There's no incentive for him to come on my show given the number of subscribers right now, right? So I would have to be nice. I would have to, I would have to frame the question as like a patty cake. Like, hey, look, I heard the story. You said that the government was going to offer you $1 billion to shut up. Like, why? I mean, couldn't they do something else? Right? Even if you're high profile and it was an accident, right? And by the way, the government has done this. There's a documentary called Wormwood or something like that. It was with the MK Ultra experiments, and they may have used chemical weapons and biological weapons in the Korean War. And there's a guy that was a medical doctor who worked for the CIA and was getting a little bit nervous about it, so they threw him out a window. And the Mossad uses that as a case study on how to, on a flawless way to assassinate somebody. So like, oh, absolutely, absolutely. You kind of have to have like a weird balance between openness, but also just ask questions in a non-judgmental way and let the audience decide, because there are a lot of charlatans. There are a lot of people who are just looking to capitalize on this, but then there are a lot of people who have had legitimate experiences that can't be explained and that have like physical evidence. So sometimes you just have to kind of give people the benefit of the doubt. And if you're wrong, so what? Right? If you're wrong, so what? Like, I just wish we would get more evidence of what the heck's going, like what is going on out there. Let's see. No, but I've heard. I think I've heard of it. That's the one that talks about all the experiments they did in brothels and things like that in the West, like in San Francisco, and the same thing with the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski. He was also at Harvard. There was a professor who was working for the CIA and put him through like this weird psychological torture, and then as a result, it kind of broke his mind, and he ended up becoming the Unabomber. So, oh, it's called Chaos. Yeah, it might be. Um, the statistic. Well, I don't know. It depends. Like I can. I was about to say the statistics indicate that, but I can find examples of both. So if you look at the Y files, like that channel's killing it. Mr. Ballin is killing it, and those are both story format. I've done like some fictional format. I think I've done 3 videos like that. Horrible results, like terrible, absolutely terrible results. But these kind of stories that may or may not be true, right, seem to be more effective. That said, like the Joe Rogan podcast dwarfs both of those channels, and he just does interviews. Now he's Joe Rogan, so like there's that. Let's see. I tell you what, like interviews are a lot easier to do. They're just harder to book. Like it's so I love doing the editing and things like that, but to get the story right, so it's a lot more work. But you're just dependent on yourself. You're not dependent on whether or not somebody misses an interview or makes an interview. Whereas an interview, they're a lot easier for me to record. now I added one step to my editing that takes forever, and that is I have this program called Audiate that cuts out, like you can go through and as you're editing, you can see the words. So you can cut out all the uhs and ums, and if somebody's like repetitive or repeats themselves, you can edit it almost in real time. But it just if you get somebody who mutters, like mumbles a lot or stutters a lot, like it can be super painful. And then you can have an interview like I had with John Yost, and that guy is like he is like smooth like whiskey. I mean, he just doesn't hesitate, doesn't say he's just very careful, and he's just got this like baritone voice that hypnotizes you. You'll see when when the interview comes up. Or beforehand, he has his documentary called Alien Abductions Answers that you can get on iTunes now and watch it in preparation for the video, because it's actually it's really well done. I think Whitley Strieber's interviewed in it. Grant Cameron as well, I think. So I appreciate that, Bruno. The one thing that people tell me, and like I have no opinion on it because I just talk to people. I try to develop a rapport before an interview, and then I just ask questions. But it's much easier than writing and coming up with an episode. You just ask questions like that people would have, mostly that I have. Yeah, I get. Yeah, a lot of people don't listen. A lot of people would just interrupt, bumble in, etc. Yeah, I wonder if there's a way to contact those people. For folks who don't know what the Rendlesham incident, that was in the early 1980s in Rendlesham Forest in the UK, where I think actually the U.S. government was storing nukes at that facility, and I don't even think the British government knew, and which might likely explain why there was a craft that landed that it was being monitored. Yeah, yeah. Bruno. Yeah, sorry. Bruno, I may have done some research on you. I think I know the answer to that, but I'm not gonna say on this call. I appreciate that, Chrono. Oh, I would have been wrong. I would have been way wrong, Bruno. Kev, you're in Taiwan? Oh my god. Well, the good news for you is if China tries to do anything in the next 2 to 5 years, the U.S. has to intervene, because 90% of advanced semiconductor wafers are produced there. Now, as soon as Intel builds the plant that they got the massive package from the federal government for in Arizona, then you're toast. But until then, and I think China's clock is 2049. That's when they want to be reunited by then. No, it won't be. It won't be this year. The Chinese aren't that dumb. They're not like the U.S. would 100% intervene, because like our entire economy would grind to a standstill because we'd lose access to advanced semiconductors. So not gonna like that's like a vital national security interest, the U.S. And my thesis advisor became Secretary of Defense, so like I know what I'm talking about in that one. Like we would not let that happen. It's just not gonna happen, and it would be ugly. But in 5 years, I can't make that same promise. But right now, we would that would be an act of we would treat that as an act of war, and we would aggressively intervene. No, that's not official policy to say that, but the Chinese know that. Like they're not stupid. Sorry, not the Chinese. The Chinese Communist Party knows that. The Chinese people are lovely people. We love the Chinese. Google, just so you know, YouTube, the Chinese Communist Party. Oh yeah, I mean it would choke everybody, the German, like Europe, everybody. I'll have to take a look at that. Then what's going to happen if Intel sends some boats to pick up its chips and the Chinese try to block them? What do you think the U.S. Navy is going to do? They're not that stupid. Like it would escalate. It would escalate too quick. And by the way, like we would use that as an excuse to solve a lot of problems, right? So like the South China Sea, in an afternoon, all Chinese bases gone, done. Oops, sorry, you shouldn't have invaded Taiwan. Now we're coming north. The Strait of Malacca closed. 90% of your oil gone. I mean, they'd have to rely on the Russians at this point, but they know. They know better. Yeah, yeah, same thing. It is not like China to invade. I think the last time they tried, I think they tried to invade Vietnam in 1979, and the Vietnamese spanked them. I mean, it was pretty ugly. Yeah, that's. I mean, that's what they're doing. They're doing a slow grind. They're just waiting until generational change. The problem is Xi is like a super dictator, right? He's kind of eliminated and destroyed all his rivals, and people are afraid to challenge him. So they're not getting the best advice or answers. I think in the next 10 years, they're going to have problems because if they're not continuing to grow, they have the bare branches problem where there's too many males per female. And there's also like a potential massive property bubble in China that could burst. And the moment that country stops growing, like growth is everything for China. If they don't grow, you're going to see some serious unrest. I mean, I think they're looking outward less. They're more looking inward. It's all about how do we keep things, stability and peace internally. That's what they're focused on. Going after, Taiwan. I mean, the CIA would have a field day inside China if that happened, right? You'd have rebellions in Tibet. You'd have rebellions everywhere. Xinjiang. You'd have all sorts of unrest that they'd have to contend with, and then they'd like run out of oil, and the economy would slow down. So it would be a tough go if they did anything like that. Yeah, I mean, but here's the thing though. Like, does the U.S. Do politicians really control the U.S. government? I mean, really? The people who they're just going to do what the unelected bureaucrats, deep state people. And by the way, I'm not one to malign the deep state. I think our politicians are so mentally challenged that it's a good thing there's a deep state. But the people in that, in the permanent bureaucracy, the whatever military industrial complex, will give Biden the right advice. I mean, look, they've given him the right advice on Russia, Ukraine, right? Like we're taking some hits in terms of inflation and oil prices and things like that, but the Russians are just impaling themselves on the Ukrainian defenses, and we're just kind of funneling weapons in. Very low yield, very high yield, kind of low investment strategy. So, no, I don't think it's going to collapse soon. We're talking like 10 years. It's going to take some time because you have somebody in who's not like he surrounds himself with yes men, and when you surround yourself with yes men, uh, things go wrong pretty quickly. Sorry, I had to. Yeah, and by the way, they wouldn't be able to take Taiwan before the it's just the Navy would be on them like flies on excrement. It just regardless of who the U.S. president is, I don't think it matters from that standpoint. Yeah, like I mean, that's what I've been doing. Like, there's a lot more videos in the very beginning. Like, if you go all the way back into the catalog, I not only predicted that Putin would go into Ukraine, but I also predicted what his initial strategy would be. Right, like where his forces would go, what their aim was, etc. And it was 100% right. But I just looked at the map; it wasn't hard to figure out because he didn't have enough soldiers to take the country. So it was clear that he was aiming for a decapitation strike in Kyiv. And I actually thought he would have succeeded, but we were all caught up in 50 years of Red Army propaganda that we actually thought that the Russian military was like ultra competent, and they weren't. So yeah, just anything with Sean McFate. He's the guy who wrote the new Rules for War. Any episode with him, we go into that sort of stuff. And and there's actually some writers that I talk to about it too. But T.C. McCarthy is another one that you can check out. Roman Skaskew. Let me just type his name. Was living in Ukraine before the invasion. So I interviewed him. He's also a former Army paratrooper, and he's looking at buying a house in I think Malin, and his neighbor, I guess, or his would-be neighbor, because they ultimately moved back to the States in December before the invasion, had hung himself, right? Because apparently their neighbor was a Russian collaborator, so he was found hanging from somewhere in the house next door. Now, whether or not he did it to himself or he was repatriated, I don't know. But you can imagine if your neighbor is collaborating with the force that is blowing, like killing your people and blowing things up, you can imagine how would you handle them. All right, well, we've been going on for about an hour and 50 minutes, so I think it's probably Azov. Nah, no, because Malin's in the north. It's like a suburb of Kyiv. So I mean, it's probably just a neighbor. Like, thank you very much, and thank you for the question. So, like, just so folks know, like, please ask those questions. Put them on the Google sheet that I typically have, and then I can prepare a little bit more in advance. So, like, Bruno was the first one to do it, so I appreciate that. Man, I can't believe I'm being watched. Kev, you're not like Chinese intelligence, are you? Thank you, Chrono. All right, I'm gonna drop off because I'm not. While you all, I'm sure, are enthralled by this content, I don't want to punish the rest of YouTube. When people see like a 2-hour video or live stream, they don't necessarily want to watch it. All right, thank you, everyone. Good night and good luck, or good day, Kev, if that works. All right, ending broadcast.